Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sankrajatam Saghana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitamscha Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyanachana Shalakya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurakam Gurganarasisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govindabhidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwa Gurunsha Divyad Bhagavat Prem Noe Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Baranam Balarka Chilanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubharam Mareka Sharanam Nyashishvara Shridaram Vanshakopatarubyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahamaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're hearing from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is Madhya-lila chapter 6, the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. This is verse number 148. Vedera niguda arta bhujana nahoy, purana bhakye se arta koraye nisjoy. The confidential meaning of the Vedas is not easily understood by common men. Therefore, the meaning is supplanted by the words of the Puranas. Aho bhagyam, nandagopa vrajokasham, yan mitram paramanandam, purnam brahma sanatanam. How greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd men, and all the inhabitants of Brajabhumi. There is no limit to their fortune, because the absolute truth, the source of transcendental bliss, the eternal Supreme Brahman, has become their friend. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Lord Brahma. Apani pada shruti varje prakrita apani charan punako he shigra chale kore sarvagrahan. The Vedic Apani pada mantra rejects material hands and legs, yet it states that the Lord goes very fast and accepts everything offered to him. Ateva Shruti Kohe Brahma Savishesh Mukyachari Lakanate Mani Nirvisesh. All these mantras confirm that the absolute truth is personal, but the Mayavadis, throwing away the direct meaning, interpret the absolute truth as impersonal. Shadaishvarya Purnananda Vigraha Jahar Hena Bhagavane Tumi Koha Nirakar. Are you describing as formless that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is complete with 6 transcendental opulences? Are you describing as formless that Lord, whose transcendental form is complete with 6 opulences? Swabhavatin Shakti Jay Brahme Hoy Nisatika Koretare Korahanis Joy. The Supreme Lord has 3 primary potencies. Are you trying to prove that he has no potencies? Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta Kshetra Gyakya Tata Para Avidya Karma Samgyaya Tritiya Shaktir Ishyate. The internal potency of the Supreme Lord Vishnu is spiritual, as verified by the Shastras. There is another spiritual potency known as Kshetragya, or the living entity. The third potency, which is known as nescience, makes the living entity godless and fills him with fruit of activity. Jaya Chetragya Shaktisa Veshtita Nripasarvaga Samsara Tapam Akilan Avapnoti Atra Santatan. O king, the Chetragya Shakti is the living entity. Although he has a facility to live either in the material or the spiritual world, he suffers the threefold miseries of material existence because he is influenced by the avidya, nescience potency, which covers his constitutional position. So the constitutional position of the living entity, as Mahaprabhu states, is Jiver Swarup Oi Krishna Nitya Das, that the living entity is by constitution the eternal servant of the Lord. But due to the avidya potency, he forgets that natural position, his constitutional position. Taya tiroti tatvatscha shakti kshetragya samgita sarvabhuteshu bhupala taratamyena vartate. The living entity, covered by the influence of nescience, exists in different forms in the material condition, O king. He is thus proportionally freed from the influence of material energy to a greater or lesser degree. Ladini sandini samvit tvayeka sarva samshraye ladatapa kori mishra tvaya no guna barjite. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Satchidananda Vigraha. This means that he originally has three potencies: the pleasure potency, the potency of eternality, and the potency of knowledge. Together, these are called the Chit potency, and they are present in full in the Supreme Lord. For the living entities who are part and parcel of the Lord, the pleasure potency in the material world is sometimes displeasing and sometimes mixed. This is not the case with the Lord himself, because he is not under the influence of the material energy or its modes. Satchidananda Moy Hoy Ishwara Swarup Teen Amse Chid Chakti Hoy Tina Rup. The Supreme Personality of God in his original form is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. The spiritual potency in these three portions, Satchid and Ananda, assumes three different forms. Anandamshe Ladini, Sadamshe Sandini, Chidamshe Samvit Jarigyana Kurimani. The three portions of the spiritual potency are called Ladini, the bliss portion or the pleasure portion, Sandini, the eternity portion, and Samvit, the knowledge portion. We accept knowledge of these as full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Antaranga Chid Shakti Tatasta Jiva Shakti Bahiranga Maya Tine Kore Prima Bhakti. The spiritual potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead also appears in three phases: internal, marginal, and external. These are all engaged in his devotional service and love. Shadvida Aishvarya Prabhur Chid Shakti Vilas Hena Shakti Nahiman Parama Sahas. In his spiritual potency, the Supreme Lord enjoys 6 kinds of opulences. You do not accept this spiritual potency, and this is due to your great impudence. Mayadisha Maya Basha Ishware Jive Bed Hena Jive Ishwara Saha Kahata Abed. The Lord is the master of the potencies, and the living entity is a servant of them. That is the difference between the Lord and the living entity. However, you declare that the Lord and the living entities are one and the same. 163. Gita Shastre Jivarupa Shakti Korimane Hena Jive Beda Kora Ishwarer Sane. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living entity is established as the marginal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet you say that the living entity is completely different from the Lord. The Brahma Sutra states that according to the principle of Shakti Shakti Matura Bheda, the living entity is simultaneously one with and different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Qualitatively, the living entity and the Supreme Lord are one, but in quantity, they are different according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, the living entity and the Supreme Lord are accepted as one and different at the same time. Bhumirapum nalo vayu kammano buddharevacha ahankara iti amme bina prakritir ashtada. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego are my eightfold separated energies. Apareyamitastvanyam prakritim vidime param jivabhuta mahabaho yayedam daryate jagat. Besides these inferior energies, which are material, there is another energy, a spiritual energy, and this is the living being. O mighty arm one, the entire material world is sustained by the living entities. Ishwara Shri Vigraha Sachidanandakar Se Vigrahe Koha Sattva Gunera Bikar. The transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is complete in eternity, cognizance, and bliss. However, you describe this transcendental form as a product of material goodness. So Mahaprabhu is critiquing Shankaracharya's impersonal philosophy stated in his Sharirak Bhashya, and Mahaprabhu is pointing out these errors to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who is trying to represent the impersonalist philosophy. Shri Vigraha Jena Mane Sehita Pashandi Adrishya Sprishya Se Hoy Jamadandi. One who does not accept the transcendental form of the Lord is certainly agnostic. Such a person should be neither seen nor touched. Indeed, he is subject to be punished by Yamaraj. Vedana Maniya Bodha Hoy Tanastika Vedashraya Nastikya Bad Bodhake Adika. The Buddhists do not recognize the authority of the Vedas, therefore they are considered agnostics. However, those who have taken shelter of the Vedic scriptures yet preach agnosticism in accordance with the Mayavad philosophy are certainly more dangerous than the Buddhists. Jivara Nishtara Lagi Sutra Koilabhyas Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hoy Sarvanash. Srila Vyasadeva presented the Vedanta philosophy for the deliverance of the conditioned souls. But if one hears the commentary of Shankaracharya, everything is spoiled. Parinamavad Vyasa Sutra Samata Achintya Shakti Ishwara Jagadrupe Parinata. The Vedanta Sutra aims at establishing that the cosmic manifestation has come into being by the transformation of the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Manijaiche avikrite prasabe hemabar jagadrupa hoy ishwara tabu abhikar. The touchstone, after touching iron, produces volumes of gold without being changed. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself as the cosmic manifestation by his inconceivable potency, yet he remains unchanged in his eternal transcendental form. So this is a reference to the touchstone, which can change base metal to gold and is not itself changed. Now somebody may say, well, we haven't seen the touchstone, although it's a metaphysical stone that we've heard about. But we can say in chemistry there's what's called a catalyst. And for certain experiments, for certain reactions to happen, the catalyst has to be present. Without the catalyst, the reaction won't take place. But after the reaction takes place, one can find that the catalyst itself has not been affected. The catalyst has to be there for the transformations of the reactions to take place, but the catalyst itself is not changed. So this is the point being raised here by Mahaprabhu when he gives the example of the touchstone, like the catalyst. The Lord has inconceivable energies, and by those energies he can manifest the cosmic manifestation. His energies, he's able to do anything within the spiritual world, doing anything within the material world in terms of, by his energies, he's causing creation, maintenance, annihilation. But the Lord himself is not affected by any of these changes. He remains aloof. For instance, when the Lord wishes to create the material nature, he just casts his glance in the direction of the material creation, and that glance comes out in the form of Shambhu, or Lord Shiva. And then through the agency of Lord Shiva, the whole material nature becomes animated. But the Lord himself, his glance doesn't touch material nature. He just casts his glance in the direction of the material nature, and everything is taking place. So the Lord's energies are able to cause the cosmic manifestation, but the Lord himself is not changed. He doesn't become transformed himself by manifesting the energies of the material nature. The material conception is that if the Lord expands, if something is expanded, then the original nature becomes transformed. But the Lord, it's like, for instance, if you take a pie and you cut it into many pieces and distributed the pieces, then the original pie is lost. But the Lord's not like that. His energies are able to accomplish everything without the Lord being involved in any of the occurrences. So whether it's the material nature or the spiritual nature, the Lord always remains as his original self, without being implicated or changed by anything that occurs through the transformations of his energies. Vyasa Branta Bolise Sutre Dosha Diya Vivartavad Tapi Jache Kalpana Korea. Shankaracharya's theory states that the absolute truth is transformed. By accepting this theory, the Mayavadi philosophers denigrate Srila Vyasadeva by accusing him of error. Thus they find fault in the Vedanta Sutra and interpreted it to try to establish the theory of illusion. Jivare dehe atma buddhi se mitya hoy, jagat je mitya nahe nashvara matra hoy. The theory of illusion can be applied only when the living entity identifies himself with a body. As far as the cosmic manifestation is concerned, it cannot be called false, although it is certainly temporary. So we can say that the aspect of illusion enters into when the living entity, or when we ourselves accept this body as being our real identity. And it's not. The body is external to our real identity. So the illusion comes in if one identifies oneself as the body. But to say that everything around it, this material world, is illusory, that is incorrect. That's the theory of Shankaracharya. That's what he presents. That everything we see is an illusion, that it doesn't really exist, okay? Because Brahman cannot be transformed. But we've already stated that the Lord is not transformed, but still his energy is able to create this material world. The world is not illusion, although everything we see may have a temporary existence. For instance, this room, all the objects within this room may be temporary, but they're not illusory. But the illusion is that I accept myself as something that I'm not, and that's this body. The body will eventually be finished, but I will not be finished. I will continue because I'm an eternal spirit soul, an eternal living entity. Pranava Jai Mahabhakya Ishwarer Murti Pranava Hoite Sarva Veda Jagat Utpati. The transcendental vibration Omkara is a sound form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All Vedic knowledge and this cosmic manifestation are produced from this sound representation of the Supreme Lord. Tattvamasi Jiva Hetu Pradeshika Bhakya Pranava Namanitare Kohe Mahabhakya. A subsidiary vibration, Tattvamasi, you are the same, is meant for the understanding of the living entity, but the principal vibration is Omkara. Not caring for Omkara, Shankaracharya has stressed the vibration Tattvamasi. So Tattvamasi establishes ourselves as being the same as the Lord. But this is, according to the Achintya Beta philosophy of Mahaprabhu, this is only half the truth. We are the same as the Lord. We are eternally conscious persons. And in our original state, there is also Satchit Ananda. Ananda means that we are full of happiness in our pure spiritual state. So we are eternal, we are conscious, and we are aware of, we can say, of rasa. But at the same time, we're different from the Lord. The Lord is unlimited, and he is controlling everything, and we ourselves are not unlimited. We are all small living entities. We are like a spark from the fire, but the Lord is like the fire itself. There is a great difference in size and scope. So we can say Achintya Beta Tattva, simultaneously one with the Lord, and yet at the same time different. The Lord is unlimited or infinite, and we are infinitesimal. But Shankaracharya emphasizes only half the truth. He emphasizes that Tattvamasi, you are the same as the Lord. But that's obviously a half-truth is worse than a lie, as they say. Emate kalpita bhashe shatadosha dila Bhattacharya purvapaka aparakorila. Thus Mahaprabhu criticized Shankaracharya's Sharirak Bhashya as imaginary, and he pointed out hundreds of faults in it. To defend Shankaracharya, however, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya presented unlimited opposition. Bitanna chala nigrahare aneka utaila sabakande prabhu nija matase stapila. The Bhattacharya presented various types of false arguments with pseudo-logic and tried to defeat his opponent in many ways. However, Mahaprabhu refuted all these arguments and established his own conviction. So Shankaracharya tried to use all means of defeating the Lord by intimidation, by false logic, but still he was unsuccessful. Although apparently Mahaprabhu was very young, he was 24 years old, and this had elicited from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya the desire to supposedly help the Lord to teach him Vedanta philosophy. But when he began discussing with Mahaprabhu, then he could not defeat the Lord's arguments. And even though he tried to use so many means to defeat Mahaprabhu, he was unsuccessful. Bhagavan Sambandha Bhakti Abhideya Hoy Prema Prayojana Bede Tina Bastu Koi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the central point of all relationships. Acting in devotional service to Him is one's real occupation, and the attainment of love of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. These three subject matters are described in the Vedic literature. So this is what is called Sambandha, Avideya, and Prayojana. Bhagavan Sambandha Bhakti Abhideya Hoy Prema Prayojana Bede Tina Bastu Koi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the central point of all relationships. Acting in devotional service to Him is one's real occupation, and the attainment of love of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. These three subject matters are described in the Vedic literature. So Mahaprabhu points out that Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, these are the subject matters of all Vedic literatures. One's eternal relationship with the Lord, that we are the eternal servants of the Lord, that is Sambandha. Abhideya is to act within that relationship, which the means of satisfying that relationship, that we are the servants of the Lord, is to serve the Lord in Bhakti. And Prayojana is the goal, which is to attain love of Godhead. So these are the Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. These are what is described in all the Vedic literatures. Arajay Jay Kichukohe Sakala E Kalpana Svata Pramana Veda Bhakye Kalpena Lakana. If one tries to explain the Vedic literature in a different way, he is indulging in imagination. Any interpretation of the self-evident Vedic version is simply imaginary. Acharya dosha nahi Ishvara agya hoila ateva kalpana kori nashtika shastra koila. Actually, there's no fault on the part of Shankaracharya. He simply carried out the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He had to imagine some kind of interpretation, and therefore he presented a kind of Vedic literature that is full of atheism. Svagamai kopitaistvam cha janan mad vimukhan kuru mamcha gopaya yena shat shrishtir eshotarotara. Addressing Lord Shiva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, please make the general populace averse to me by imagining your own interpretation of the Vedas. Also cover me in such a way that people will take more interest in advancing material civilization just to propagate a population bereft of spiritual knowledge. Mayavaram asatchastram prachanam bodham uchate mayaiva vitam devi kalo brahmana murtina. Lord Shiva informed Goddess Durga, the superintendent of the material world. Lord Shiva informed Goddess Durga, who is the superintendent of the material world. In the age of Kali, I take the form of a Brahmana and explain the Vedas through false scriptures in an atheistic way, similar to Buddhist philosophy. Shuni Bhattacharya Hoila Parama Vishmita Mukena Nishare Bani Hoila Stambita. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became very much astonished upon hearing this. He became stunned and said nothing. Of course, Mahaprabhu explains why the Lord is presenting this form of atheistic philosophy. Because originally people were misusing the Vedas and they were justifying animal killing and eating animals on the basis of that sacrifices like Ashram Go-meda are authorized in the Shastras or in the scriptures. But those kinds of sacrifices of a horse or a cow were done in former ages, and by those sacrifices, brahmanas could revive old cows, old horses by this form of sacrifice. But people were misusing that and thinking that these forms of sacrifices were for justifying them eating cows or eating the meat of horses. So then Lord Buddha came, and people argued with Lord Buddha that this was sanctioned in the Vedas. And Lord Buddha said, then I do not accept the Vedas. And he presented what may be considered to be something outside of the Vedas when he presented his philosophy of ahimsa. He stopped all this misuse of the people were misusing the Vedas, and he said, then I do not accept the Vedas. And then Shankaracharya came, and to bring people who were previously now Buddhists, to bring them closer, he essentially presented Buddhist philosophy, but in the terms of Mayavad philosophy, which is similar to Buddhist philosophy, and now presenting that as an interpretation of the Vedas, so that then people could be at least still with the little, with you can say some similarities to Buddhism, but in terms of some reference to the Vedas, which is basically presenting Shankaracharya's Mayavad or impersonal philosophy. And then Mahaprabhu came and defeated that impersonalist philosophy and brought people back to the true meaning of the Vedas. So this is a transition over long periods of time, but there is a reason why the Lord authorized or had Shankaracharya come to present what we can say, this impersonalist philosophy. So, Prabhu Kohe Bhattacharya Nakora Vishmoy Bhagavane Bhakti Parama Purushartha Hoy. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then told him, do not be astonished. Actually, devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the highest perfection of human activity. Atmarama Parjandakori Ishvara Bhajan Aichya Chintya Bhagavanera Gunagan. Even the self-satisfied sages perform devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Such are the transcendental qualities of the Lord. They are full of inconceivable spiritual potency. Atmaramas Chamunayo Nirgranta Apiyarukrame Kurvanti Ahaitukim Bhaktim Itambhuta Guno Hari Those who are self-satisfied and unattracted by external material desires are also attracted to the loving service of Sri Krishna, whose qualities are transcendental and whose activities are wonderful. Hari, the personality of Godhead, is called Krishna because he has such transcendentally attractive features. This is the famous Atmarama verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Atmaramas Chamunaya Chamunayo Nirgranta Apiyarukrame Kurvanti Ahaitukim Bhaktim Itam Bhuta Gunohari. Those who are self-satisfied and unattracted by external material desires are also attracted to the loving service of Sri Krishna, whose qualities are transcendental and whose activities are wonderful. Hari, the personality of God, is called Krishna because he has such attractive features. Shuni Bhattacharya Kohe Shuna Mahashai E Shlokararta Shunite Banchahoy. After hearing the Atmarama verse, Sarvabhauma addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. My dear sir, please explain this verse. I have a great desire to hear your explanation of it. Prabhu kohe tumi ki arta korat taha age shuni pachayami koriba arta jeva kichujani. The Lord replied, first let me hear your explanation. After that, I shall try to explain what little I know. Shuni Bhattacharya Shloka Korila Vyakyan Tarka Shastra Mata Utaya Bibida Bidan. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then began to explain the Atmarama verse, and according to the principles of logic, he put forward various propositions. Nanabad Arta Koila Shastra Matalaya Shuni Prabhu Kohekichu Ishat Hashiya. The Bhattacharya explained the Atmarama verse in 9 different ways on the basis of scripture. After hearing his explanation, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, smiling a little, began to speak. Bhattacharya Jani Tumi Sakat Brihaspati Shastra Vyakya Korite Aiche Karo Nahishakti. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, my dear Bhattacharya, you are exactly like Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly kingdom. Indeed, no one within this world has the power to explain the scriptures in such a way. Kintu tumi arta koile panditya pratibhai iha bai shlokara ache aro abhipray. My dear Bhattacharya, you have certainly explained this verse by the prowess of your vast learning, but you should know that besides this scholarly explanation, there is another purport to this verse. Bhattacharya pratanate prabhu vyakya koila taranaba arta madhye eka nachunila. Upon the request of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Mahaprabhu began to explain the verse without touching upon the 9 explanations given by the Bhattacharya. Atmaramascha shloke ekadasha parahoy pritak koila pader arta nischoy. There are 11 words in the Atmarama verse, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained each word one after the other. Tat tat para pradanye Atmarama milaya Ashtadasha Arta Koila Abhipraya Loya. Lord Chaitanya took each word specifically and combined it with the word Atmarama. He thus explained the word Atmarama in 18 different ways. Bhagavan Tara Shakti Tara Gunagana. Bhagavan Tara Shakti Tara Gunagan. Achindya Prabhavatiner Najai Katan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different potencies, and his transcendental qualities all have inconceivable prowess. It is not possible to explain them fully. Anyajata Sadhyasaran Kore Achadan Etine Haresida Sadakaraman. These 3 items attract the mind of a perfect student engaged in spiritual activities and overcome all other processes of spiritual activity. So Mahaprabhu said, the Supreme Lord, his different potencies and his transcendental qualities all have inconceivable prowess. It is not possible to explain them fully. These three items attract the mind of a perfect student engaged in spiritual activities and overcome all other processes of spiritual activity. Sanakari, Shukadeva, Tahate Brahman, Ematanana Arta, Korana Vyakyan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained the meaning of the verse by giving evidence concerning Sukadeva Goswami and the four rishis, Sanaka, Sanat Kumar, Sanatan, and Sanandan. Thus the Lord gave various meanings and explanations. So, Sukadeva Goswami, although he was transcendentally situated and not part of this material world in terms of his activities, he became attracted by the Lord when he heard the Srimad Bhagavatam. Then he was attracted by the Lord's qualities. And the four rishis, Sanaka, Sanat Kumar, Sanatana, and Sanandana, they are the four Kumars. They became attracted when the Lord appeared at the gates of Vaikuntha, and they were attracted by the fragrance of the tulsi manjaris offered at the lotus feet of the Lord, and by smelling his fragrance of his body smeared with sandalwood. In this way, when the fragrance of the Lord entered into their nostrils, their conception of life changed from impersonalist conception to becoming attracted by the Lord. So the idea is that the Lord is not someone of this material world, but even those who are situated beyond all material activities, they can also become attracted by the divine or transcendental qualities of the Lord. Shuni Bhattacharya Mani Hoila Chamatkar Prabhu Ke Krishna Jane Kori Apana Dikar. Upon hearing Mahaprabhu's explanation of the Atmarama verse, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was struck with wonder. He then understood Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be Krishna in person, and he thus condemned himself in the following words. Ihota Sakat Krishna Muina Janiya Maha Aparada Koinu Garbita Hoya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is certainly Lord Krishna himself. Because I could not understand him and was very proud of my own learning, I committed many offenses. Atmaninda Kori Loila Prabhur Sharan Kripa Koribari Tabe Prabhura Hoilaman. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya denounced himself as an offender and took shelter of the Lord desired to show him mercy. Nijarupa Prabhu Tari Koraila Darshan Chaturbuja Rupa Prabhu Hoilatakan. To show him mercy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed him to see his Vishnu form. Thus he immediately assumed four hands. Dekhaila Tariyage Chaturbuja Rup Pache Shama Bamshi Mukha Swakiya Swarup. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first showed him the four-handed form and then appeared before him in his original form of Krishna with a blackish complexion and a flute to his lips. Deki Sarvabhauma Dandavat Koripadi Puna Uti Stuti Kore Dui Korajudi. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya saw the form of Lord Krishna manifest in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately fell down flat to offer him obeisances. Then he stood up and with folded hands began to offer prayers. Prabhur Kripaya Tara Sfurila Sabatattva Nama Premadana Adi Marnena Mahatva. By the mercy of the Lord, all truths were revealed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he could understand the importance of chanting the holy name and distributing love of Godhead everywhere. So, let's see. Shada shloka koila eka danda na jaite brihaspati taichi shloka na pare korite. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya composed 100 verses in a very short time. Indeed, not even Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly planets, could compose verses as quickly. Shuni suke prabhutare koila alingan Bhattacharya primaveshe hoila achetan. After hearing the 100 verses, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happily embraced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was immediately overwhelmed in ecstatic love of Godhead and fell unconscious. Ashru stamba pulaka shveda kampa tarahari nache gai kande pare prabhu paradori. Out of ecstatic love of God, the Bhattacharya shed tears and his body was stunned. He exhibited an ecstatic mood, and he perspired, shook, and trembled. He sometimes danced, sometimes chanted, sometimes cried, and sometimes fell down to touch the lotus feet of the Lord. Deki Gopinathacharya Harashitaman Bhattacharya Nritya Deki Hase Prabhurgan. While Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was in this ecstasy, Gopinathacharya was very pleased. The associates of Mahaprabhu all laughed to see the Bhattacharya dance so. Gopinathacharya kohe Mahaprabhu prati se Bhattacharya Prabhu koile e gati. Gopinathacharya told Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "My Lord, you have brought all this upon Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Prabhu kohe tumi bhakta tomara sangha hoite Jagannath ihare kripa koila balomate." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "You are devotee because of your association. Lord Jagannath has shown him mercy." Tabi Bhattacharya Prabhu Sustira Korila Stira Hoya Bhattacharya Bahu Stuti Koila. After this, Mahaprabhu pacified the Bhattacharya, and when he was quieted, he offered many prayers to the Lord. So I'm stopping here, and in our next reading we'll continue. Hariharaya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama Jaravaya Maravaya Keshavaya Nama Gopa Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Manana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jawate Vignana Shabishta Puran H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradas Tasavar Pararenu Mora Panchagras Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Janame Janame More Abhilas H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjayaman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koria Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naradamodas Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shrimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shrimad Srila Bhakti Rakshira Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Premsi Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Bhagwat Ki Jai Narottam Srinivas Shyamananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Vishvavaranya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Navadip Dham Ki Jai Sri Mayapur Ki Jai Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Saparshada Sriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai Sri Koladvip Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram Ki Jai Ganga Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Sham Kuna Radhakunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai all the assembled devotees Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo